5 perfumes were worn through 7 controlled evening tests, always with 2 sprays, always at 7 p.m., always at conversational distance, and one of them was noticed by 8 of 10 men before the woman wearing it had finished her first sentence. It was not the most expensive bottle. It was not the one with the loudest opening, and it was not the fragrance the sales counter predicted would win. In fact, the perfume that filled the room fastest performed worse once dinner began, while the quietest bottle in the group created the highest number of unprompted lean-ins, second glances, and later recollections. That distinction matters because noticeable is not the same as loud. File that away. I tested each fragrance on skin rather than paper, because paper cannot reproduce warmth, movement, fabric, or the small cloud that forms when a woman reaches for her glass. I also kept one rule that department stores rarely mention. The first date has a scent ceiling. Remember that phrase. Cross it, and your perfume stops introducing you and starts speaking over you. This test matters because most fragrance advice confuses projection with attraction. A counter assistant sprays a card, waves it through cold air, and tells you which perfume is strongest after 20 seconds. But a first date is not a counter. It is a warm restaurant, a wool coat, a car seat, a hug at the door, and 2 people sitting less than 3 feet apart for 90 minutes. Women over 40 know the particular irritation of buying a fragrance that smelled polished under department store lights, only to discover that it became syrupy at dinner, medicinal in the car, or so familiar that the man across the table associated it with an office colleague before he associated it with you. The industry rewards the first blast because that is what sells the bottle. Your date experiences everything after it. That is the gap we are closing. Dior Hypnotic Poison Eau de Toilette is positioned as the unapologetic seduction bottle, the red apple-shaped object women reach for when they want warmth, sweetness, and immediate presence. At the time of this comparison, it was $150 for 100 milliliters. The opening is bitter almond folded into dense vanilla, with jasmine underneath and a faint root beer effect that can feel deliciously strange on cool skin. It does one thing exceptionally well. It creates an instant edible aura. A man does not need fragrance vocabulary to notice it. He recognizes sweetness, warmth, and something almost dessert-like before he identifies perfume. But the counter rarely tells you how quickly that almond-vanilla accord can become theatrical. In a small restaurant, 2 sprays near the neck may expand into a thick cloud that competes with wine, food, and conversation. On some skin, the almond turns plasticky. On others, the vanilla takes on a cosmetic powderiness that reads more costume than intimacy. It is memorable, but it can be remembered as the perfume that arrived 5 minutes before the woman. Keep that image in mind, because the next fragrance makes the opposite mistake. Yves Saint Laurent Libre Intense Eau de Parfum is sold as polished authority with a sensual finish, and women reach for it because it promises competence without sacrificing softness. The price was $180 for 90 milliliters. It opens with aromatic lavender and bright citrus, then moves into orange blossom, creamy vanilla, tonka bean, and a warm amber base. The sensory effect is a tailored black jacket over bare skin, clean lines, heat underneath, nothing accidental. Its great strength is clarity. Every stage is easy to perceive, and men notice it quickly because the lavender cuts through the sweeter base like a cool blade. Then comes the catch. Libre Intense can become too articulate. The aromatic opening is sharp enough to dominate the first 10 minutes, and the vanilla amber base can project beyond the table long after the opening settles. On confident skin, it feels composed. On warm skin in a heated room, it may feel declarative, almost managerial. A first date needs presence, not a quarterly briefing. Libre Intense is impressive, but impressive is not always the same as inviting. Already a pattern is emerging. The perfumes that win at 10 feet can lose at 3, which is exactly where a first date actually happens. Chanel Coco Mademoiselle Eau de Parfum is positioned as the immaculate modern classic, the bottle women buy when they want to smell expensive, finished, and socially fluent. The price was $172 for 100 milliliters. It begins with a bright, almost sparkling citrus accord, followed by rose and jasmine, then dries into patchouli, pale woods, and clean musk. Picture orange peel twisted over a silk scarf, then placed inside a cedar drawer. What it does well is structure. It keeps its shape from the first spray to the final trace, and it moves easily from restaurant to theater to hotel bar without ever appearing careless. Men notice it because it reads immediately as perfume in the traditional sense. Groomed, feminine, deliberate. But the very thing that makes it reliable also limits it. Coco Mademoiselle is so culturally familiar that it often arrives carrying someone else's memory. A former colleague, an ex-wife, a hotel lobby, a woman from a wedding 10 years ago. On some skin, the patchouli becomes dry and papery. On others, the clean musk turns brisk enough to feel formal. The counter will praise recognition as proof of success. On a first date, recognition can quietly erase individuality. The next fragrance is less recognizable, but that creates a different problem. Mon Guerlain Eau de Parfum is positioned as mature softness, a lavender vanilla fragrance for women who want warmth without sugar and femininity without girlishness. The price was $180 for 100 milliliters. The opening brings bergamot and lavender, but the lavender is not herbal or medicinal. It feels brushed, almost suede-like, before jasmine, sambac, and vanilla soften the edges. Sandalwood gives the base a creamy, quiet depth. Its strongest quality is emotional temperature. It smells calm, not passive, not timid, calm. Men often notice it after the first movement rather than at the first spray. When you remove your coat, lean across the table, or turn your wrist while speaking. The flaw is performance inconsistency. On moisturized skin, it develops beautifully for 6 hours. On dry skin, especially in cold weather, it can retreat so quickly that the wearer keeps spraying and eventually crosses the scent ceiling without realizing it. Mon Guerlain is also almost too well-mannered for a loud venue. In a crowded bar, it may become a private pleasure rather than a shared one. Hold on to that idea of quiet movement, because the final perfume uses it more strategically. At this point, ask the question the counter avoids. Do you want him to notice perfume, or do you want him to notice that something about being near you has changed? Narciso Rodriguez, for her Musc Noir Rose Eau de Parfum, is positioned as an intimate musk with a darker fruit opening, and women reach for it when they want sensuality without the obvious choreography of a seduction perfume. The price was $165 for 100 milliliters. It opens with plum and a fine spark of pink pepper, then tuberose appears. Not the loud, waxy tuberose of old evening perfumes, but a softened floral creaminess, wrapped around the house's signature musk. Vanilla and a suede-like warmth sit close to the skin. The effect is not a cloud moving through the room. It is the scent of warm fabric, clean skin, dark fruit, and the faint trace left inside a scarf. What it does best is create proximity. At arm's length it is clearly present, yet it does not flatten the air between two people. The flaw is exactly what some women will consider a virtue. It will not announce you from the doorway. Musk can also produce partial nose blindness, meaning you may stop detecting it while the person beside you still can. The counter may respond by encouraging extra sprays. Do not. 2 sprays are enough for dinner. 3 only if one is placed low on the torso beneath clothing. This was the only fragrance in the comparison that repeatedly caused men to move closer before they commented on the scent itself. That is not projection, that is placement. I have put the exact formats discussed here, along with a printable first date fragrance guide and current retailer links, in the description, so you can compare without standing under counter lights. Check the size before buying, because smaller bottles sometimes have a higher cost per milliliter but make more sense for occasional evening wear. It is the resource I wish someone had handed me before I bought several beautiful bottles for the wrong situations. Before I name the winner, here are the 4 criteria that decided it. First was conversational radius. Could the perfume be detected between 2 and 3 feet without occupying the entire table? Second was transition under body heat. Did it become rounder and more inviting after 20 minutes, or sweeter, sharper, and heavier? Third was interference. Did it fight with food, wine, upholstery, and the natural smell of skin, or did it remain distinct without becoming intrusive? Fourth was memory shape. When men recalled the fragrance the following day, did they remember a brand-like perfume profile, or did they remember the woman and describe the scent as part of her presence? That last criterion separated competence from chemistry. The winner is Narciso Rodriguez for her Musc Noir Rose Eau de Parfum, $165 for 100 milliliters. It won conversational radius because 2 sprays stayed inside the space of an actual date rather than broadcasting to the next table. It won the body heat test because the plum softened, the musk warmed, and the tuberose became creamier instead of louder. It created the least interference with dinner and the most consistent close-range detection in the car and at the doorway. Most importantly, it won memory shape. Men did not describe it as a strong perfume or a sweet perfume. They remembered warm skin, dark fruit, and the moment the wearer leaned closer. Noticeable is not the same as loud. You filed that away, and here is the payoff. The first date has a scent ceiling, and Musc Noir Rose was the only perfume that reached it without breaking through it. After the result, I compared notes with an independent collector who has cataloged more than 1,200 fragrances over 18 years. Without knowing my ranking, she said Musc Noir Rose was the one most likely to be perceived as part of the wearer rather than a separate accessory. A fragrance consultant who trains luxury retail teams made the same observation from a different angle. She found that Libre Intense attracted the fastest explicit compliments, but Musc Noir Rose created more physical closeness before anyone mentioned perfume. That mirrored the test almost perfectly. One fragrance produced comments. The other altered distance. Here is the buy guide, beginning with the winner. Buy Narciso Rodriguez for her Musc Noir Rose at 100 milliliters if your first date involves dinner, a quiet bar, a gallery, or any setting where you will spend real time within arm's reach. It is right for the woman who wants sensuality to be discovered rather than announced. It is not right if you want a room-filling trail or if very soft musks disappear completely on your skin. Buy Guerlain Mon Guerlain at $180 for 100 milliliters if you want warmth, composure, and a perfume that feels especially elegant in cool weather, at a seated dinner, or on a date where conversation matters more than spectacle. It is right for a woman who wears cashmere better than sequins. It is not the best choice for a noisy venue, and dry skin needs unscented moisturizer underneath rather than 4 extra sprays. Buy Yves Saint Laurent Libre Intense at $180 for 90 milliliters if the date begins in a large hotel bar, rooftop space, or evening event where your perfume needs enough structure to survive noise, movement, and distance. It suits a woman who enjoys aromatic lavender and does not mind being perceived as decisive. It is not for a tiny restaurant, a warm car, or anyone who tends to overspray. Remember the scent ceiling. Buy Dior Hypnotic Poison Eau de Toilette at $150 for 100 milliliters if the evening is cold, playful, and slightly theatrical, or if bitter almond and dense vanilla feel natural on your skin. It can be magnetic outdoors and comforting in winter. It is not for a warm room, a tasting menu, or a first date where you already feel nervous enough to apply one spray too many. Buy Chanel Coco Mademoiselle Eau de Parfum at $172 for 100 milliliters if you need a polished, all-purpose fragrance that can carry you from work into dinner without changing clothes or identity. It is right for a woman who values structure, consistency, and a crisp patchouli dry-down. It is not the best choice when your goal is to create a private scent memory rather than a familiar impression. The wisdom across all 5 is simple. Choose for distance, temperature, and setting, not for the fantasy printed beside the bottle. What this comparison revealed is larger than fragrance. Women with developed taste are often sold visibility when what they actually want is recognition, and the industry benefits when those two ideas remain confused. Quality is not always the thing that speaks first. Sometimes it is the thing that becomes more precise the closer someone comes. Subscribe if you prefer tests that respect your judgment more than the sales counter does. And tell me this in the comments. On a first date, would you rather wear the dark plum musk of Musc Noir Rose, the calm lavender vanilla of Mon Guerlain, or the sharper confidence of Libre Intense?